Hanson, and I am a dating and relationship coach. And today we are live. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We are on Twitter. We are on a lot of things, Facebook, and we are a lot of things live. And we are having a very important discussion on why it is so important to look at the awareness, elevate the awareness on the topic of recovery, on mental health and addiction. And yes, it is a special time of, the season, it's Christmas time. And yes, there is this disease that we draw attention to. And, the Mom Link, we are members of the Mom Link. And you may not have heard of this, a very important group that's global. And we are 34,000 strong globally of women. We are moms, we are entrepreneurs. And Janae Pitts is with me, and we are going to be talking about this important topic, and we are drawing attention to it. So hello, Janae, and welcome being with me here today, talking about mental health, recovery, the very positive aspect of recovery, and addiction. So welcome, Janae, to join with me today on this very important topic. And we're using the theme of, Celine Dion's song, her seasonal song of "Don't Save It Up for Christmas Day." We need a lot of love every day to this important topic. So over to you, Janae, and tell us who you are and why you're here with me today.
Hello, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here on your platform. I am very honored to do so. My name is Janae Pitts. I'm also known as the Travel Vet. I'm a U.S. Army retired major after 26 years, mother of four, currently residing in the sunny country of Costa Rica, Pura Vida, which in turns has a lot to do with mental health. And I call it my superpower. On some good days, on some bad days, it's my But with that being said, I am a business owner. I own a travel company, which is also internationally over 70 advisors, Caribbean, the United Kingdom, and all of the continental United States, and will soon be expanded into Canada. So super excited about that. So that's a little bit about me, but really, Elizabeth, mental health and recovery, I will have to say this is a topic that a lot of people shy away from, especially during this time of the season, right? Because no one wants to be anybody's trigger. However, I feel like you are absolutely correct when we need to bring the awareness and attention out there. And let's not be all holly jolly merry, not realizing that there's others who are not holly jolly merry, and to speak to them so that they can understand that they are being heard, even if they're silent. Does that make sense? So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for this platform. And I'm so ready to get it going. Back to you.
Oh, thank you. And we have the beautiful, beautiful Crystal Almadea, who is with us today. And she is a co-founder of the Mom Link. And Crystal, welcome. Janae and I are just kicked this topic off, this very important topic of recovery. So want to emphasize in the disease of mental health and addiction, and emphasizing the recovery aspect of it and how important this is, and using the theme of "Don't save it up for Christmas Day," because every important we're drawing attention how the Mom Link, and I'm putting my hand on my heart, because the Mom Link is taking the initiative and using our impact and influence in bringing awareness to this so important issue, because people are dying on the streets. Women are dying on the streets. Of course, men are as well. But when we as women, a strong force, are taking the initiative to really drawing attention to this at a small community level, but also at a global level, we're bringing our hearts and our love and attention to this. And here is a co-founder, and much love to you, Crystal. Over to you. Open the mic, introduce who you are and the influencer that you are. Over to you. Take the mic.
Good morning, beautiful queens. Good morning, everybody here watching this live or the replay. My name is Crystal Almeida. I am the co-founder of the Mom Link, and an incredible community of women supporting women, female entrepreneurs who look to connect and collaborate with one another so they can scale their businesses. It's quite the incredible community. And, you know, since it is the last few days before the end of 2022, I want to encourage you, if you are listening right now, if you are a female entrepreneur or you are an aspiring female entrepreneur, the one thing I want you to do in 2023, find a community, join a community, and do not do entrepreneurship alone. It is not meant to do it alone. And in fact, if you link arms with other like-minded women, such as the women in the MomLink community, you will go much further, much quicker together than alone. So that's my little tip for 2023. Make sure you're joining community, finding your tribe of like-minded women. So in regards to the topic today, I'm not sure if you know, Elizabeth, but in my 18 years in working in a nonprofit, I worked also behind a harm reduction counter, a needle exchange counter here in Chatham, Kent. It was a moment when I worked for this harm reduction program that was so much growth for me in breaking down some of my own preconceived notions and understandings of addiction in general. And I also came to surface some of my own stigmatized ideas around harm reduction and what it means in needle exchange. So I had so much growth. And I think the one thing in recovery, and the reason I share this today, is that word stigma. I think a lot of what holds us back and holds our world back and holds people from starting today, from, you know, stepping into that recovery journey, is that stigma word, right? It's a scary place to share that I am, yeah, buddy, that I am in recovery. Just wait, look, Papa, right there. It is a snowy Christmas day over here. We're stuck in a little bit of a snowstorm, so I got my kiddos at home. But as I was saying, I think that word stigma, that stigmatization around people in recovery or people, you know, dealing with addictions is what's actually holding us back from getting on this recovery journey, from supporting our loved ones, from knowing how to support our loved ones. So if one thing I would love to see the MomLink, yes, let's fundraise some dollars for mothers and women in recovery. And we've got an incredible event happening in the new year that myself and Elizabeth and some other MomLink ladies are putting together. We're going to be doing a MomLink Polar Dip fundraising in pink event for mothers and women in recovery. And I'm really excited about that, not just because the fundraised dollars that we're going to be able to donate and pay it forward, but most importantly for the awareness that we are creating. And we'll be bringing, you know, this awareness not just to the local community for Port Elgin, Ontario, where Elizabeth lives, but to our global community in the MomLink as well, and start having more conversations around what recovery looks like and what it means to support somebody in recovery, and knowing, you know, how to ask the questions, how to have the difficult conversations, and how to truly be that support person that somebody in recovery is looking for. So I'm super excited to continue to learn, because I myself, yes, I worked in harm reduction. Yes, I've got a lot of knowledge around harm reduction programs and the benefits to communities to have these needle exchange programs. At the same token, I could use a lot more awareness and language around individuals in the recovery stages of their life as well. So I'm excited to learn so much from you, Elizabeth, so much from the women that will be supporting and creating some awareness for.
Okay, so you've said a lot, and I want the listeners, and I'd like you two ladies to put your seatbelts on, because I'm going to tell you a story which is true. Now, I am the real person of who we are doing this recovery. So from trauma to triumph. And if you look at this phase, I am the person who is in recovery, who is in the person of addiction, who is in that person of mental health, who could have been that person on the street dead. So now so I'll tell you this story quickly. I was a healthcare professional. This disease takes everyone. No one is immune to the disease of addiction. No one is immune. And, you know, I didn't start drinking until I was in my 40s. And just like cancer, you know, this is a disease. This is a medical disease. No one chooses to be an alcoholic. No one chooses to be, you know, stand up, put my hand up. I'm going to be an alcoholic. I want to be a drug addict. No one does that. So, you know, not taking anything away from the disease of cancer. You're not, but there's no stigma, as Crystal said, there's a stigma to it. So I'll tell you what happened to me. I had a son with autism, and I tried so hard to make him normal or to make him more typical. I was a healthcare professional. You know, there are so many doctors, nurses that are addicts that, you know, you don't even know who are addicts sitting beside you in all your community. It takes so many people down. Anyway, I was one of those people in the community, in the hospitals, in the community. I had a huge job, but I had to deal with this son who, I'm just going to give you an example. He would be 9 years old. Trying to get him to school was in the day. I would get a call by 10 o'clock. I'd be at my desk dealing with, you know, I had 20 healthcare professionals that I was supervising in all of Southwestern Ontario in a specific disease that I was managing in the community. And I would get a call. We're calling the police because we can't manage him. He's bitten the teacher. He's kicked out the window of a school bus, and we're having to isolate him in a room that we've built with gym mats, and it's really a padded room, but we still can't manage him. And I have to I'm on my way to packing up because there's a meeting at 1 o'clock in Windsor, and I'm in London, Ontario. I have to rearrange my day, which, you know, other healthcare professionals are waiting for me. His dad's a lawyer, and he wants nothing to do with this other than to put his head in a snowbank and not deal with it. And I've got my daughter at another school expecting me to do something else. Anyway, that's just a minimum. But he's already had 3 police takedowns already. So you can only imagine the tension. And my husband says to me, you can change your job. You can go to a part-time job so you can look after yourself, or you can look after, I wanted to look after my son better. But he said, you can, but you have to make the same amount of money or more. That was his answer to me. So everything was falling apart. And I want to tell you that I didn't ever do this, but I tell you, I thought it a million times. I wanted to take my son and myself for a car ride, and we were not coming back. We were not coming back. That's how desperate and destitute I was. We were not coming back. I had no family support. No one wanted to deal with it. No one wanted to talk about it. And everyone said it will get better. It wasn't getting better. I couldn't make anyone, I was trying to make peace in the family. It was chaos at school. It was chaos at the home, and everything was falling apart at work. I just wanted to escape with my dear sweet son. That was 95% chaos everywhere. And the only reprieve I had was my bottle. At 9 o'clock at night, game over, numb time. Until the next morning. And when I wake up, this is the sad thing. All I saw was a gun pointing to my head. Oh, my first vision in the morning. And the same thing repeated. So I crashed. When I had to admit my son to residential care. He was 10 years old. No one could cope with him because he became lethal. He wanted to throw his sister down the stairs. And she was just a petite little thing, 2 years old. So he was becoming lethal. He was becoming so dangerous, we couldn't keep him in school. I was non-coping, no one, it was awful. So he went into residential care. My heart was in a vice, and I didn't know anything about detox centers or whatever, and I took myself to the hospital. Well, the first time it was, this is really hard for me to say. You know, it's in my book. I wrote this story. It's all in my book, Bride Doll. It's a love story, but it's the vulnerability is, that's why I'm telling this story, because it's in my book. But the stigma of the reality is, you know, my sister, she knew I was struggling. She knew I had the words of not wanting to end things, because my daughter was with her older sister who was married, and my husband was checked out physically, emotionally, spiritually, and she knew I had the words to saying I wanted to go. And she called the police from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and she was in Northern Ontario. And the police came to the door, and they took me to the psychiatric ward. So I needed protection. So I was that person. I am that person. Now I'm going to take you to triumph. I went to recovery. I needed that protection of that housing. You know, I couldn't stop drinking by myself. I couldn't. So from that social drinker, whatever the reason, you know, no one chooses just to drink. And I self-medicated. Did I have the choice to not drink, or whatever the reason? I was a non-coper. Call that weakness, call that poor self-will. Sorry, I'm human. You know, but I didn't draw, you know, whatever. I'm not going to, and there are no excuses, but I went to recovery, and I needed that protection. I was there for 2 months. So, you know, you can't really slice the mental health from there. So and I consider alcohol a drug. So yes, I'm an alcoholic in recovery of 14 years. And what have I done in that 14 years? Yes, and I help. So that brought me to purpose. You know, my son is now doing really, really well. And in that recovery, I learned acceptance, radical acceptance of myself and of him. I don't try to change him and normalize him now. I just love him. And that's all he can do is love. He's still nonverbal. He still will walk in front of a train. You know, he doesn't have any idea of safety. He's got the cognitive level of a 2-year-old, but his behavior is much better. He's managed so well with his medications, with his health. I'm managing it amazingly well. My friends here never knew that, you know, I open up more and more as I'm more trusting. And, you know, I emphasize to the Mom Link that we really needed this, and they could see my passion. But my passion became my purpose. And I feel that, you know, this alcoholism, this autism didn't happen to me. It happened for me now, because now I live it. I used the 12-step program. But for that I was in the psychiatric floor for 2 months. But they could see that I was determined and went to recovery, went to treatment. But I needed that protection. Otherwise, if I was just turned over back to the street, I would have died. So yes, there is a stigma. There's shame to it. Here we are 14 years later, and I'm going to say the guts to talk about it. But it's worth it to start chiseling away the stigma, to start chiseling away for other women. And when you help women, you help their children so that they can get back to their families. And that's what I'm doing, to help other women. And everyone's been touched. You know, Crystal, you have a dear friend who's just had a tragedy. And
Yeah. Elizabeth, I want to ask you, I have two questions for you. First of all, thank you for sharing your story, Elizabeth. I've heard it before, I've read it in your book, and I just admire you so much, Elizabeth. And I know I've said this to you before, but every time you share your story, you open up the door for somebody else to not feel so alone. And the biggest part of this conversation, and this is where my two questions are going, I think you have so much value to give to the family members, to the supporting people, to the people who see the signs but don't ask the questions. And I think half of stigma, the problem with stigmatization in our world, is a lack of knowledge and understanding and being afraid to ask questions because we don't want to cross boundaries. We don't want to make somebody uncomfortable. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to feel stupid. And I think the big lesson that I've learned is you need to ask the questions. You need to say it out loud. If it comes from a loving place and a place of only care and compassion, ask the questions, say it out loud. Don't be afraid to have the conversation with your loved ones. Because when you do that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, but having these conversations, as uncomfortable as they can be, they're also uncomfortable for the person, in that position. But maybe that's the icebreaker to other conversations to further, and don't be afraid to ask, how can I support you? So my first question to you, Elizabeth, is for the woman or mother who is struggling right now with an addiction, what can family members, friends, and support systems, what can they do to help that individual in that specific situation?
what they can do is say, I love you. I'm here for you, and I'm not giving up. The family member might see the relapse over and over again, but assure them of love, assure them, and never lose faith, because the person needs the love, and hand it over to whatever you believe in. So I have faith in God. But whatever it could be, the wind or the universe, you as the family member have the faith, be it the universe, that the higher power will look after your loved one. But never give up, that they will find in their time the recovery they need. So it may take years, but have faith that, let's say, God will look after them. But all you have to do is love them, and never give up on the love you have for them. But berating them, or giving you the advice of what not to do, you've got to stop drinking. That's not going to work. They'll only retreat. It'll do the opposite effect. You've got to go to rehab. You've got to stay in rehab or whatever. Of course you want them to get there, but assure them of your love. And let's say it's drinking. The best thing you can do is go to what's free. For example, Al-Anon. It's free. Or for the children, what you might not know of is what's free. There's Alateen, or there's children, let's say you're old and you're 40. There's also meetings for adult children of alcoholics. There's meetings for that. So even if your parent was a drug, like let's say my children are, which is impacts. So I have a daughter that's 29. She could still go to adult children of alcoholics. There's meetings for that. Even if it's an eating disorder or whatever. But then let's say Al-Anon, if you have a family member who who is the alcoholic or the drug addict and you don't know what to do, that's where you get the support. That's where you get the how to cope with. But in the immediacy of only show that person love, only give love, love, love. And that's what it's all about, you know?
Elizabeth, I love that answer. So you've said provide them with love, an abundance of always letting them know that they are loved, providing them with resources and access to information, tools, and resources in the community that may be available for, that may be free resources. And then, okay, so my follow-up question to that. Right now, you know someone who is struggling with alcohol. It is the holidays. We all get together, our families get together. During the holidays, there's, alcohol that's, around us. If you are supporting somebody who has a problem with, who has a challenge with alcoholism, what would you say to the family during the holidays? Do you eliminate any alcohol in the household? Like, I want to know from, I want to answer these questions for people supporting other members in this, current situation. How do you handle that as family members, as friends, as support system during the holiday season?
So if someone is just newly stopped drinking, I would say respect for you and to the family. We're not take initiative. No alcohol. And everyone, that would be great. So if someone's under a year stopping drinking, so you've supported that individual. You're championing, being the champion.
I love that.
If you, and if someone
goes to a party, Elizabeth, what if I were to go to a work environment party? You can't remove the alcohol. How do we support somebody with, let's say we're going to a work party? How do you support your friend who may have a substance challenge or issue? How do you support them in that environment?
Okay, so if it was let's say in your purse, okay, so you've got your purse, you make sure you brought another bag. And you've got Perrier, you've got 2 bottles of Perrier in your purse, and you've got it for them. So even if they didn't bring that themselves, like I would bring my own, as you know I do, and you've got it for them. So they've always got a drink. There's no excuse. You've got that drink for them. That's how I would support your friend. But I would also say to the friend, call them ahead. Have you got your drink? How have you got your safety plan? Have you made your safety plan? And they'll say, oh yes, I've got it. So usually the safety plan is someone in good recovery. They'll say, yes, my car's going to be parked on the street. Yes, I've got my drink of choice. Yes, the host knows that I don't drink or whatever. So people in good recovery, people know that they're a non-drinker. And people nowadays, they just believe that that's a life choice. So that's great. I'm a non-drinker. You don't have to tattoo on your forehead, I'm recovering alcoholic, right? So many people are non-drinkers.
Elizabeth, what you just said, the reason I asked that question, I loved your answer, because that goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning, the stigma and the uncomfortability for people when actually you're doing your friend, your family member a disservice by not asking the questions. Just because you're uncomfortable, that's your problem. You need to do what's right? So asking the questions, saying, do you have your safety plan? Do you have this? Do you have that? Sometimes as friends and family and support members, we don't want to ask those questions because we're like, oh, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. This is awkward. This is uncomfortable. But no, ask the questions, because when you ask the questions, you show your level of support and love.
Yeah. I'm going to chime in real quick. So a couple of things. Great questions, Crystal. Very great questions. But I want to go back to the question when you were talking about the family. How does the family support? Elizabeth, you were talking about love, but I would also share, based off my experience as well, to not be an enabler. Love them, but don't enable them. And so a lot of times as family members, we feel like we're helping. So we're not saying, you need to be in rehab, but we're allowing them to continue doing their blitz and fits to get what they need just to calm them down and to make sure that they're safe. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that's helping, but that's actually enabling them and crippling them instead of you taking them to the hospital or taking them to a recovery center with all the love in your heart with no judgment whatsoever, but of saying, I'm not going to enable you. I'm going to help you every time you come to me. Just know what I'm going to do so that they know if they're going to come to me, Janae, oh, you getting in the car. We're about to go on a ride, that kind of thing. I'm not going to give you what you need or what you want at that particular time. And then also, Crystal, and Elizabeth, you were talking about the Perrier and bring it to you. I thought that was so great because listen, even though there is stigma, there is always still that question of why don't you drink? Da, 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 da. They want to know if it's a life choice, if it's a life change, what makes you stop. And this is just people who are not thinking nothing of it because sometimes people don't know you're in recovery. And I know from experience that a lot of people sometimes often don't share in the beginning as they're going through their way themselves and haven't made that breakthrough yet to just share everything. But I do know that if you have a drink in your hand with a straw, it can be a Shirley Temple. It can be water that looks like vodka. It could be whatever. People are going to assume that you're drinking and they're not going to ask questions. But if you're like one person that's roaming around in the office party and there's nothing in your hand, someone is going to be bound to put a drink in your hand. So I'm so glad that you said what you said, Elizabeth, to bring it with you. We used to say, BYOB, bring your own beer, or BYOD, bring your own drink. And in this case, bring your own drink is actually advantageous in any social setting, to include at the family social setting, to keep those questions at bay and to keep people from putting something in your hand that you do not want. So I love this conversation. Great topic.
Yeah, especially if the person is not good at recovery, yet, you've got something that you're supporting them. The question was, how do you support them? You're not giving them an opportunity, or you're suggesting at the family function, maybe they just stay for an hour, or they're newly out of recovery. Suggest to them ahead of time, you only have to, I suggest you only stay for dinner, then leave. You're not expecting them to stay for the whole hour. Give them a note, and in recovery, there's what they call they keep AA meetings going, for example, 24 hours, so people don't get into trouble. And there's so many things in the community and online. 24-hour meetings now exist online. So all 365 days of the year, for example, women in recovery, all 365 days a year, 24 hours, women can get onto a meeting anytime, which is fabulous. You can meet people in Australia. So it's just how you want to get connected. There's really no excuse. You can, and it's just connection. And then the other thing I didn't know, and I wish someone could have told me, you don't have to go into a meeting and say, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict. There's a third tradition. It's, I desire to stop drinking. That's all. And you can get into any meeting. And there's so much love in the meetings. You're embraced. When you're self-loathing, there isn't an alcoholic or an addict that comes into a meeting. There's so much self-loathing at the time, but you're embraced with love.
Oh, Elizabeth, I never heard that third thing. That is so powerful. I am a huge advocate about the power of language, and we need to be responsible for the language that we use and the impact that it creates in the world. And that small shift there, it's like, it's like when people say the word commit suicide. It literally rattles me every time I hear it. And because of the recent, celebrity loss, we're hearing it. There's all over social media and tons of celebrities using this word. And I've been really stumped. Somebody needs to let the world know that the word committed is such a negative connotation word. It's saying somebody committed a crime, right? And so I bring that up as an example because I think as having that third option that you just said in these support groups is huge. It's changing the power. It's taking that power back in language, right? And the other thing that you mentioned in this conversation, I think it's a huge eye opener for everybody, and using this third option in recovery support groups, is because not everybody comes to the decision to stop drinking or stop using because they were dysfunctional, because they were a mess, and couldn't hold on to their lives. Like you said in the beginning, when I worked behind the harm reduction counter, I met doctors, teachers, name it, functional users. You would never, there is a such thing as functional use, right? And oftentimes when we think of the word drug addict or alcoholic, we have a certain picture in our mind. And I think people need to erase that, because there are so many different levels and so many different decisions that bring people into recovery. And it's not that picture that's been painted in our world. And that's that stigma piece again. So there's a such thing as functional users who then make a decision to not use and to go into recovery. So I love that third option. I'd never heard that before.
Yes, and I
And
wish
I
I
love
knew.
that. I'm sorry,
ahead.
I just have to jump in too, because it's crazy. The third option is in the military. We have we have programs in place, ASAP, the substance abuse program, the Army substance abuse program. But what Crystal just said is so dynamic, because sometimes functional alcoholism, functional everything is a thing in the military. It is truly a thing. We talking about veteran soldiers who have been doing some things outside of their career, but still able to do their jobs. And then it doesn't come to light till like later on, to something just wow happens, right? That no one saw coming. But the thing is, the first thing, and sometimes in the as we would call it, the fifth floor, where soldiers go to be assessed and evaluated, and to have like a 30-day spell sent inpatient, depending on their situation. But one of the requirements is to go to AA, right? And I think hindsight 2020, it's not always the right thing to do, because when you're forcing someone to do something that they don't feel like they have a problem with, it becomes even more rebellious in their spirit to not do it. But what you just said, Elizabeth, the third option of not saying, I am alcoholic, because going to those meetings pushes that on you. And in the case the military forces you at the time to go to those type of meetings, could you imagine what it felt like to be sitting there like, what? That's not my issue. That's not my problem. Why am I here? Type of deal. And so when you just said what you said, I was like, wow, there's progress, there's movement, there's things that happen. A third option where I don't have to say those words because I don't feel that way. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing it as a third option, that it is out there for people.
You could go through your whole, you could call it, you don't have to call yourself anything, in AA. And it's meant, there are many other ways, but it's free. You could get the most expensive out there and pay $1 million for treatment and it won't work. The best out there by research is AA, and it's free. And you never have to call yourself an alcoholic. So the other thing, when we talk about mental health, you almost all of the mental health treatments, you hear cognitive behavioral therapy. The best cognitive behavioral therapy, again, which is free, is the 12 steps. And the 12 steps is a spirit. Did you know that? It's a spiritual-based program. And I practice the 12 steps. And I think the people that know me, I'm one of the calmest people you know. And, I don't want this to sound like I'm advertising. I'm not. It's by attraction more than, but, this is how I operate my life. This is how I live my purpose, my passion and my purpose. So my mess, as our dear friend Emily Lyons, who we've met, we hear about and has come to the Mom Link many, many times, but she uses the phrase, my mess has become my message and is my purpose. So my mess of alcoholism has become my message and has become my purpose of how I serve. So, I love, I trust myself, I trust my tribe in the Mom Link, and I bring my purpose to serve in what I do, to give back. But this is what I do, and to serve is the 12th step. Having had, a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. That's it. That's what the 12 steps is all about. And another thing, having had a career in healthcare, I belong to a caduceus group, and a caduceus group is healthcare professionals. So every Monday night, I'm with 40 healthcare professionals in a treatment recovery. So it's mostly physician specialists who are addicts and alcoholics, where we run an accountability in recovery, and it's all healthcare professionals. So I've been doing this for 14 years, and I'm one of the peer supports. So my recovery is, I live it every day, but it's cognitive. And the physician, the addictionologist who runs it, said the best cognitive behavioral therapy is the 12 steps. So I'm going with that, and it's keeping me sober. But I do recovery every day, and I bring it. That's the way I run my business.
Mhm.
So,
I absolutely love that, Elizabeth. And then Crystal, you mentioned resources and stuff, that there's programs everywhere and that there's meetings 24 hours. There's apps as well on your phone. They got the AA Big Book, they have AA audio. So if you don't want to read, you can listen as you go. They got a 12-step program app. It's just there for you. And I would say during a pandemic, it was a challenge for a lot of different people, especially those who thrive on meetings, for being there. Because, the meetings are not just to share what's going on with you, but it's a fellowship. You build relationships with the individuals, and they turn into friendships, and and then turn it into family, so it is a great thing. And during that 2 years, it was not, kind of just stop, across the board. But what I saw was a whole bunch of apps coming up. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. And they made a way, like Miss Elizabeth said, to continue that connection, just like Clubhouse made a connection for us across the world. So did the AA community. I would tell you, here in Costa Rica, it's so crazy. I found 2 AA recovery places, right? I just in the heart of town. I was just walking and you say, "Oh, what? This is AA, really?" Like, wow. And then just other places, just places you wouldn't even think that they are. So they're internationally. That's the other thing. Again, people in recovery are going to attract others who are like them. And if it's not something that's there already, they're going to make it happen. Even if it's a shack on the beach, they're going to make it happen. And that's going to be their spot.
when I travel all over the world, that's what I look for. It's part of my trip. And you meet amazing people. It's a whole different level of vacation. So you have your trip, but I go and make it a point that's part of my vacation as well, because you meet lovely, lovely people, but you also meet people on the street, and it keeps it real. It keeps you humble, bringing, that's the upper level, the top, giving back and, taking it back to, don't save it up for Christmas Day, though at the beginning of recovery, people need that protection, that need that love, because I was that person on the street. I was that person ready to just take up, to leave this world. I was that sick. I was that sick. And be it cancer, and be it be it alcoholism or drug addiction. And it doesn't matter how much you drink, it's what it does to you. You could go on a binge once a year and go absolutely nuts. You're still an alcoholic. You're still a drug addict. It's your behavior. And you can go online and look at the 20, if you just Google 20 questions, up comes the 20 questions you can ask yourself whether you're an alcoholic or a drug addict. It's the behaviors. And then you can see, so whether you're a functional alcoholic or not, if you can answer 3 or more of those questions, you're in a scary zone. So so many people think it's the amount you drink, it's the behavior. So, bringing it back to every day, it's the love. It's the love. And I loved what you had to say, Janae, about not enabling. And, thinking about the theme of don't save it up, bring awareness, take the stigma out of it, protect the women. Because again, just as your son, Crystal, came in, the children, the women and men can recover, do recover, and they give it back. They give it back. The people in recovery always come back and share it and give it back to the newcomers. I was just at a beautiful meeting last night. I go to meetings and you think, and there's people who've been in recovery 30 and 40 years that keep coming back and giving back to the newcomers. And, the richness of the love and keeping recovery real. Relapses, and it's a chronic disease. So if I started drinking today, my disease is, we call it doing push-ups in the parking lot, because it's a chronic disease, would be worse than what I left it as. So anyway, it's a beautiful time in the holidays to think of those who are, dying in the streets with fentanyl overdoses. That's real, that's disease. And we can't look at that and judge, because there's no love in judgment. And I'm just so thrilled that you both came on this live with me to share the awareness, to take the stigma out of it, and to let me be vulnerable. And yes, and I thank the Mom Link. I thank you, beautiful, beautiful souls. And closing words from you, Janae.
Elizabeth, again, I just want to thank you for having this platform, this real conversation, for having it to be open. For the simple fact, like I said before, it's not a topic that a lot of people want to talk about during the holidays. A lot of people just see a lot of Mary. But I do want to say this: whenever you think or feel like you didn't hit rock bottom and there's no other way, Elizabeth just said something very key. Finding people with needles stuck in their arms because, they OD'd on fentanyl. I had a nephew, I still have a nephew, thank God, who had his own struggle, and it was totally by accident because he was a weed smoker, but it was laced with fentanyl, and he had no idea. And just that exposure has started like over a decade. We're talking from the age of 14, young age. But over the last decade, it started a pattern. He became addicted to it, which led to imprisonment, just in and out of jail, the circumstances. I had an aunt who passed away from a drug overdose. So when I talk about my experience, I understand from the family's perspective, and I understand from walking the walk myself, from both sides. So when you feel like there's no other way out, none whatsoever, go downtown, to your city, go to the local homeless shelter, go and see for yourself. Because if you still got a roof over your head and a bed, you're winning. You are so winning, because when you go down to the homeless shelters, you will see a lot of people who are not winning. They don't have a roof over their heads that their own. They have their children there that they have to protect from others, because it's open to everyone. And sometimes there's not a room for you to separate the mothers and the children from the population, right? So, things of that nature is different. And so just, take the time out to look at situations from a different lens. Even though you're going through, there's other people that's going through too. And I know that might seem weird, that it might give you some solace, but then again, it'll say, man, my situation could have been so much worse. And I will tell you, for what I did for my sons, it made their whole perspective change, because I had children who were entitled and privileged, and they felt like Christmas presents under the tree was the greatest thing. And if they didn't get what they want, then they had a mean little pouty face. Oh, that was the first and the last time they ever displayed that, because we took the favorite toy, took it down to the homeless shelter so they can see the children who didn't have the Christmas tree with all the presents, and they gave them their favorite toy. And it became a ritual in our household, because they now understood that, wow, they didn't know that there were children who didn't have a tree. They didn't know there were children who didn't have presents. In their mind, everyone got Santa. Santa Claus went to everybody. So I want you guys to understand that in situations where it feels like there's no way out, there's no hope, there's always something that you can do to see somebody else's story. And then, believe it or not, it would really give you the joy to help someone else that doesn't have that roof over their head, who doesn't have that bed. So thank you again, Elizabeth, for bringing this to light right before the holidays.
Yes, what an incredible conversation, ladies. A much needed conversation. I'd love to continue in 2023, having these conversations, bringing awareness and education to people around the world. The thing I'd love to leave people with today, Janae, I just loved your share. I loved the piece that you shared about enabling, and the difference between, what Elizabeth said, which is providing an abundance of love, but knowing the difference of the abundance of love and the enabling piece, I think is a huge piece of information you shared today for people currently supporting people with addictions. And the reason I say that is it's hard to know the difference between enabling and providing abundance and love. And Janae, what you said was so genius. I'm going to use that to anybody I know from here on out. You are the person that if they come to you, you're going to have an abundance of love, like Elizabeth said, but they know that you're going to open the car and you're going to get in the car and we're going to go to this place, So I love that. I just think that's a really good tool and tip to give people who are trying to support family or friends in that situation. The other thing I want to leave people with, when we talk about, go down to your downtown city, to your homeless, go and, I want us to encourage each other. Let's take ownership for the world that we live in and how people are struggling in the ways that they struggle today. And if we took ownership on our language, our views, and our preconceived notions on what it means to have an addiction or a substance challenge issue in life, then we can make this world a way different place and probably less people in these positions. If we change one thing, when we walk down the street and we see the person, a homeless person on the street, may have a mental health or a drug addiction or substance use challenge, let's not say, I'm not giving them money. I'll give them food, but I won't give them money. Like, I think we need to change our attitude when we see people struggling. I think when we have, there's an idea in people's minds that people, they choose to do that. Nobody chooses to have a drug addiction. Nobody chooses that. Nobody would ever choose that. And you can ask anybody who has struggled with addictions currently, who's in recovery. You can ask anybody and they will all tell you the same answer. If I could choose not to, I would. So let's change our responsibility. Let's take ownership of what we could do differently in 2023, how we walk, how we talk, how we view people, and change our language around it so we can start breaking down the stigmatization with people who are struggling with substances or drug addiction. So that's my big piece. And I want to continue to have this conversation in 2023. I'm super excited for us to do this fundraising event here in Port Stanley, Ontario. Stay tuned. We'll be doing lots of lives in the next few months talking about how you can support this great initiative. I personally will be doing the Polar Dip. I am like minimum, I am fundraising $500. We are trying to hit a goal of $10,000 total donation for women and moms in recovery. So stay tuned for more information about that. Elizabeth, I adore you. Janae, you both of you are such beautiful ladies. I'm wishing you both happy holidays to everybody listening. I hope you found this valuable today. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for bringing us together.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can definitely hear from the conversation today, we're not saving it up just for Christmas Day. So much love to you and to everyone. Thank you for coming, and goodbye and happy holidays to everyone. You are very special women to me, and wonderful topic. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Love you guys.
Love you more.